So when we watch these stories, when we see Scrooge make that change to really transform, as Dickens says, he truly did change. He kept Christmas in his heart all the days of the year. That's encouraging. That can be a really gratifying thing to see, because if Scrooge can change, we can too. So here we are, talking about The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yes.
You have watched it how many times?
Oh man. How old am I now? At least that many times?
At least that many times. And I think there's a lot of kids, well, not kids, but adults now who grew up with it, right?
Yeah,
so
it came out in 1992, which is the year I was born. So people at home can do the math.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people around my age have been watching it since about then.
You know, it's really interesting because when I did a Google search, it looked like it was the second most popular version of A Christmas Carol ever.
That does not
Ever.
surprise me at all.
It really surprised me.
Really?
I just don't think of Gonzo as Charles Dickens.
Hey, wait a second. You're not Charles Dickens.
So I would guess that probably most of the people who are watching this right now do not need to know what A Christmas Carol is about.
I would hope not.
If somebody does, this is the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. He's a terrible person. He is very cranky and he hates Christmas. And then
He's
he's
mean
visited,
and he's greedy.
mean and greedy, and he is visited by 3 ghosts along with.
Actually, technically in the book, he's visited by 4 ghosts.
That is true.
In Muppet Christmas Carol, it's actually 5.
5. Why? Because
Because instead of just one Marley, we have to have Marley and Marley.
We're Marley and Marley.
which honestly was one of my favorite things about this. I
Yeah.
love Statler and Waldorf, I think are their actual names.
But he's visited by these ghosts, and basically the moral of the story is that he needs to change or he is doomed for all eternity.
Doomed. Doomed.
Boom, Scrooge.
So tell me a little bit about why you keep coming back to this version of A Christmas Carol year after year.
You know, it's the first version of A Christmas Carol that I was exposed to. So there's definitely some nostalgia to that. I think that the music, because it is musical.
There's only one more sleep till Christmas Day.
Really and truly, some of the best Christmas songs out there. Like it's none of it is a traditional, you know, Christmas music, but every one of the songs I think really just hits that spirit of Christmas to where like you leave this movie and you're just like, you have the spirit of Christmas in you, just like Scrooge. You know, that's how I personally feel. I'm sure there's people out there who are like, nope, you're wrong. But you know, I really enjoy the jokes that are in it. They're clean jokes, you know, so we're not dealing with like, you know, toilet humor or adult humor. It's just genuine, just sweet, joyful, funny movie.
Very Muppet.
Very Muppet.
Rizzo kind of cracked me up. Rizzo's the rat that sort of hangs out with Gonzo Charles Dickens. And yeah. he's pretty funny. My favorite part one of my favorite humorous parts involving Rizzo was when he was so nervous about being on top of the gate.
The gate. And he's like, I don't want to jump. And then he finally jumps. He misses and Gonzo doesn't catch him. And then he's like, oh, I forgot my jelly beans. And he walks through the bars of the gate. And Gonzo's like, you could walk through?
What? You can fit through those bars?
One of the other things about that I think really works about this, Michael Caine as Scrooge.
That actually is probably another reason why I keep coming back, because as the lead human being character in the movie. I think that he really nailed the character.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if I ever met Michael Caine and I was like, my favorite role that you've ever done was Scrooge.
Forget the Oscar.
think he'd be
Forget these dramatic roles.
He'd be like, really? That's the one? I don't know. I've never met him. But that would be my favorite role that he's ever done.
Well,
and that's the one that sticks with me.
Yeah. And the thing is that he truly sells this role, right?
He does.
I would imagine that it's not the easiest thing to act with a bunch of puppets, but he never breaks character. He is always seriously Scrooge. So do you have a favorite scene in this movie? I know, let me just preface this by saying you confessed to me after you watched it this last time that maybe there was a tear shed. or
Yeah, but that
two.
wasn't my favorite scene.
No.
No, it just made me sad.
But still.
That was in the scene that made me sad. I think it just hits closer to home. Just as you live life, certain things hit you differently. And I think that the scene in when the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come takes him to Bob Cratchit's house and Tiny Tim is no longer there, and you just see his
Oh.
crutch by the fireplace. That was the scene that got me.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I am sure we shall never forget Tiny Tim or this first parting that there was among us.
I think that as you go through different seasons in life, I think that as you experience different things, movies, even in movies that you've seen, 30 plus times,
Yeah.
you get to a certain scene and you're like, it just hits differently. It affects you differently because you've changed and things in your life have changed,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
This
I
was
wonder-
definitely one of those
Yeah.
situations.
I sort of wonder whether that's one of the appeals of the story itself,
Mhm.
right? Because, this has been being told since the 1830s, 1840s, I believe.
Something like that. I
Charles
think.
Dickens wrote it a long, long time ago. And yet it's still being told and retold and retold. And I think that probably a lot of us watch some sort of version of this story every single year. And I do think that it sort of brings something new to the table every single time we see it. That's sort of the power of good storytelling in a way.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, the very, very first Christmas Carol movie that I discovered was made in 1901.
Probably the first movie that was made of it.
It was crazy old. It was 6.5 minutes long. It was called Marley's Ghost, and it had
Interesting.
cutting edge special effects for the time. So we've
Meaning
seen,
practical effects.
yeah, it doesn't
Not
work very well.
CGI.
It doesn't hold up as well, but still,
It would have been a silent film too.
it would have been a silent film. Yes, absolutely. And so you have this story has been told so many times. When you talk with film experts, probably the best version that they would say is the Alistair Sim version from 1951, I believe.
Is that the one that's the most popular version?
It is the most popular
That
version.
makes sense.
Yeah, so apparently that is sort of like the all-time classic Christmas Carol if you're not into Muppets. So that is a really important one. But then you think about all the revisions that you've seen. You think about Bill Murray's Scrooge. Do you have one of my favorite Christmas movies from just a couple of years ago, Spirited? Apple TV, Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell. I think you have the ability within these characters to kind of tell new and different creative stories that sort of spin on the very, very familiar story that we're all used to.
There's certain movies where you can only tell that story so many different ways, and sometimes you can only tell a story one way, and it's like, well, that is the one time I'm going to see that movie. There is no way they're going to reboot that. I hope most of the time. But I think that with A Christmas Carol, the message of the story that it's just everything about like redemption there, salvation. It is a story of redemption and salvation, and I think that sticks with people. And it's not inherently a Christian story. It has a lot of Christian values, obviously, and a lot of Christian themes. I mean, I would consider it a Christian story, but the way
Yeah.
it's told is not Christian, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that people maybe cling to it because of that. Because if you are, if you don't have Christ and you are searching for Christ, if you're searching for Christ, but maybe don't realize you're searching
Yeah.
for Christ in this fallen world, then you're clinging to something that gives you hope. Is
Yeah.
there hope for mankind? Is there hope for the future? Is there, can people really change? That's a big one, I
It's a
think.
huge one. It's a huge one.
And I think that might be the biggest one, is that
Mhm.
it's never too late for somebody to change, and people can completely change. And in the
Yeah.
case of Scrooge, like, the first song that they sing is about how he's Mr. Humbug, Mr. Greed, Mr. Skinflint. Like, they're just giving him all these names and describing his awful character. And there's a group of Muppets in that song who are like, well, maybe he's just a victim of like fear and loneliness. Maybe there's a reason he's so bad. Maybe he's just trying to make us think he's bad. And then he walks by and scoffs at them or whatever, and they're just like, nah. He really is just the meanest person alive, and there's no reason
Yeah.
for it, because he has had a very good life.
Yeah.
Like he has had every opportunity to be a pleasant person. He just chooses not to be. But then he turns around, and by the end of the film, you hear, Gonzo Charles Dickens narrating, like, it's said that nobody could keep the spirit of Christmas quite like Scrooge. He kept it year round. He kept his promise. He changed. He was generous to the poor. He treated everybody as a member of his family. A niece or nephew is what Scrooge actually says in his transformation song,
Yeah.
And I think that there's somebody in everybody's life where you're just like, I just wish I could change this thing about you. And I don't know if it's possible or
Yeah.
if it's just too late for you. But this
Yeah.
story says that it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Which, again, that is a Christian
is.
message. It is never too late for somebody to be transformed by Christ, you
Yeah.
know? And if you are searching for Christ, even if you don't realize that you're searching for Christ, this story sticks with you, I think.
One of the great things about A Christmas Carol is it literally allows you to see their past and see what might have brought him to this point.
Mhm.
So you do see his time in school where he was hurt, where he was left behind, all that kind of stuff.
But by his own choice, he was choosing to sit in the classroom and continue working while all his friends were outside playing.
Who cares about stupid old Christmas?
Well, that is true. In the book, it's his dad actually said, you are just going to stay at school while all of your friends go home for Christmas break.
It didn't say that it was his parents who made him do that in the Muppet Christmas Carol,
Yeah.
but you do learn that he is staying at school over Christmas break while
Yeah.
everybody else returns home.
One of the things that I loved about the Muppet Christmas Carol is just how Michael Caine as Scrooge deals with that scene,
Mhm.
because you can see him saying, yes, it was my choice. Yes, I did this. It was so good for me to get caught up on my studies. But then you see the pain in his face as he's
Because
talking
he was
about
lonely.
It's a really, in a movie with a bunch of puppets, it's a remarkable scene. It really is.
Yep.
Yeah, there were some reasons why he sort of became the person that he was, but it was his choice. You see that scene where he's talking with his fiancée, and you can tell
Yep.
that he loved something more than her.
I love you, Bill.
You did once.
So when this movie was originally remastered, they had, I don't remember exactly the circumstances, but they had lost the footage for one of the songs. And so it wasn't remastered. So if you're streaming it, it streams on Disney Plus. So if you're streaming it on Disney Plus and you just play it, they skip over that song. And it's really awkward because you're like,
Really?
Because it just cuts and you don't really understand why all of a sudden Michael Caine is crying. And you're like, why are you crying all of a sudden? You know, because you see the conversation with his younger self and the woman he wanted to marry, and then it just cuts to him crying, and you're like, well, that's jarring and upsetting. And it also, to me, you know, as a lover of musicals, the thing about the musicals is there's always a reprise, you know, of certain songs. So that song does get a reprise at the very end. But if you didn't see that song, you're like, why are they singing this? Like, we know this song. And it's like, because you should have known it, because it should have been there. But if you go to the extras, you can find the full version and it has the song in it. You just have to, so don't just play Muppet Christmas Carol. Go to the extras and play that version, the full version, because it'll include the song. That's the only difference, is the full version has the song, the correct version, because that's the version that, like, you know,
correct
I
version.
do say it's the correct version, because if you had the VHS as a kid,
Which you
like I did,
yeah.
it was in there. So in my opinion, that
That
is
is the
the
right
correct
version.
version.
Yeah.
Just a little tip for everybody at home.
That is actually really fascinating, because both times that I've watched it, I've only seen it twice. Both times that I watched it, Disney Plus, and I never.
And you forgot to do that, didn't you? So you missed one of the, and it's one of the best songs in the movie. It's so good.
The love is gone. The love is gone. I wish you well, but I must leave you now alone.
As we sort of talk a little bit about this, though, it really is interesting because I think that is pretty reflective of, as you say, sort of Christian thought. Like, how do we get where we are? We live in a fallen world. We have bad things happen to us, and that
Yeah.
creates scars. That hurts us.
But in his case, you know, he made the choice not to marry her.
Right.
And like, granted, I mean, she's the one who's like, no, I'm leaving and I wish you well. But it was because he no longer loved her. As you said, he
Yeah.
loved something else more than he loved her.
He loved his money more. And
Yep.
that was a choice. And that is also very, very biblical, right? Because
Yep.
not only do we live in a fallen world, but we are fallen ourselves. And we follow after the things that we shouldn't follow after. And money, the love of money, I mean, it's right there in the Bible, right? That's sort of one of Scrooge's main impulses.
You know, I think the weirdest thing about Scrooge's love of money is that it wasn't about spending it. It was about just
No,
having it. He just
just
wanted to hoard
having
the
it.
money because, you know, he's walking through his house. He has all of the lights off because darkness is cheap. It's more about the status that his money brings, I think, than the actual money itself.
And even that, when you think about it, it truly is the love of money. And let me just fess up. As a little kid, I actually loved counting my money. I would empty out all my change on my bed, and I would count it up, and I would stack it up, and it was.
Did you do snow angels and your money on your bed?
I never had that much, but I really did. It was really cool to me, and I wonder whether Scrooge had sort of that same aura about him, whether it wasn't. You know, money is not bad in and of itself. It can buy some great things. You can use it to give to other people. You know, and Christmas is a time when we're able to give gifts to those who we love, right? So those are cool things. When you use money correctly, it can be kind of a cool thing. But when you love money, you just want to hoard it. You just want to hold it. And that is where, you know, you could argue that Scrooge went at his worst, is because he just hoarded that money.
I agree. He likes that people know when they think Scrooge, they think money.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And one of the things that I love about all these stories, something that you touched on earlier, was that sense of redemption, that sense of change. And all of the versions of the Christmas Carol that we've ever seen, change is at the very core of it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, as you talk a little bit about how you got a little bit weepy during Muppet Christmas Carol, I tear up all the time when I watch Spirited, in a particular song that Will Ferrell, of all people, sings. He sings this song called Unredeemable, where he wonders whether his change was real. He wonders whether he was just too bad to truly be a better person. And because he plays sort of this version of Scrooge, it is really powerful because I think that in our own Christian walks, we know that we're saved. We know that we're redeemed. We know that our sins are washed clean. And yet, I think at times, at least in my life, emotionally, sometimes I don't quite believe it. Sometimes I wonder whether I am truly changed, whether I'm truly redeemed. Even though I intellectually know it, there's still emotionally, that can be a different thing, you know?
It's like a feeling of unworthiness.
Yeah. So when we watch these stories, when we see Scrooge make that change to really transform, as Dickens says, he truly did change. He kept Christmas in his heart all the days of the year. That's encouraging. That can be a really gratifying thing to see because if Scrooge can change, we can too.
Like the idea of the story is that if somebody as bad as Scrooge can be saved, then there's hope for the rest of us too.
Yeah.
I think it's also important just to kind of like remind ourselves a little bit and just be like, but that doesn't mean that if we're not as bad as him, that we don't need to change.
That's absolutely right.
Because that could be the wrong message to take away from this. So no, the idea is that if somebody as bad as him can change, then we can too. It should be even easier for us in a way.
That's absolutely right. And that actually brings us to some of, if you're watching with your kids, this is something that you can talk with them about because there are some places where the story diverges from Christian doctrine.
Oh yeah.
Right. Where one of the things that I remember from the movie is, the Marsleys are floating around, they're singing their great song, and they're talking about how, and this is true to the book, how they forged these chains in life.
Chains! We forged these chains in life by our acts of greed!
You wear such a chain yourself!
Yes.
Right. And so what we find throughout the story is really the idea that you are kind of saved by your works. Would that be fair?
Yes, it does lean towards the works-based salvation, but Jesus isn't absent from this story either.
No,
he's not. Now, don't get me wrong. He's not part of the story in the sense that, Scrooge needed to find Jesus, which, would have been the truth. But he is present in the sense that Bob Cratchit takes his son, Tiny Tim, to church, and he's telling his wife about it, Miss Piggy, and he's like,
Oh, as good as gold and better. He told me that he hoped the people saw him in church because it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Jesus's presence is there, but it's not the theme of the story.
Yeah. It feels like it has sort of like an undercurrent of Christianity, an understanding that's sort of very much a part of this story.
And the way Dickens originally wrote it and thought about it is that he wanted the theme and the morality of Christianity, but reportedly, he was not a big fan of established religion at all. He wasn't a big fan of the church. But he believed in Christian themes and salvation. And so when he wrote this, I think he purposely didn't want to do it that way because he wanted his message to get across, and his message was that we need to live lives where we are generous to the poor, where we do take care of the sick and the homeless, where we have that, we share the love, that's all around us, and aren't greedy old misers like Scrooge.
Yeah.
If they'd rather die, then they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Oh dear, oh dear.
One of the things that I'm kind of realizing, Tiny Tim, who
God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
He is probably the most religious character.
He is. He actually is, in my opinion, especially in Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah. And when you think about the story, he's clearly the weakest character that we really meet. He is
physically, you mean, right?
Physically. That's exactly right. He is small, he is frail.
He's tiny.
He's Tiny Tim. But he becomes the catalyst really more than anything else maybe.
For Scrooge's change.
That's exactly right. Which really also sort of leans into sort of that Christian sense where the last shall be first. When I think about the Bible, there's so many times when God uses unlikely heroes to serve his purpose. And you
Yep.
look at Scrooge, he's got all the money in the world. He could have all the power. He definitely has lots of power over the people who rent from him.
In his
He-
little circle of influence.
He is a powerful dude. Tiny Tim isn't powerful at all, and yet he becomes the catalyst for really the entire arc of this story.
I think you're correct. You know, he didn't give a whit for Bob or Tim's dad. You
Yeah,
know, he was
yeah.
just kind of like, no, you can't have Christmas Day off. How dare you even ask me? You know, he's like, I can't believe you would pick my pocket by wanting
Yeah.
this day off.
It's a poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every December the 25th.
He really didn't care. But then, you know, the minute he finds out that Bob has this son who's actually, you know, quite sickly
Yeah.
and very weak, and he's like, oh man, I didn't even know what was going on in his life.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I thought he was being greedy and trying to rob me. And it's like, no, he's just got a family he's trying to provide for.
To the founder of the feast, Mr. Scrooge.
To Mr. Scrooge, you'll be very merry and happy this day, I have no doubt. No doubt.
Cheers.
They don't have a lot of worldly possessions, but they
Yeah.
do have an abundance of love in their hearts, and they share it with everyone they meet. And
Yeah.
that affects Scrooge too, because he's just like, he realizes, he's like, you know, these people are happy and I'm not. Why
Yeah.
am I not happy?
Yeah, yeah. In a way that sort of gets back to Tiny Tim and his little time in the church, you
Mhm.
know, because when I listen to you talk and you talk about sort of that transformation that happens in Scrooge, talk about the lame men walk, the blind men see. In a way, Scrooge is totally blind. I mean, maybe one of his biggest sins is that he doesn't really look beyond the walls of his own business. And so when he's given a chance to actually see the Cratchits, to see them and their love and their poverty, and see Tiny Tim, all of a sudden it becomes that much more real. Instead of you know, anytime I see Beaker in anything, he was one of the asking Scrooge for a handout, right?
Yeah.
For the poor and impoverished.
Oh, dear.
And Scrooge, he thinks of them as just sort of this thing, the poor. I do not care about the poor.
He literally says, don't my taxes pay
Yeah.
for the prisons and the poorhouses? I feel like I'm about to, you know, give the pastor's sermon right here. It's like, what we have, all of it
This is
belongs to
what-
God. You know, these are the things that we've been gifted here on earth.
Well, but
That
it's
sort of-
true, right?
But it's true. And I think that, you know, again, these messages aren't really said, they aren't said straight out
Yeah.
in the story, but it's there. It's
Yeah.
like that undercurrent that you were
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, and you just think about when you see the need face to face, when you look at it in the eye, then all of a sudden it becomes a different thing.
Yeah.
It becomes a personal thing.
Oh, Spirit.
As the Cratchit family vanished into the darkness, Scrooge kept his eyes upon Tiny Tim until the last.
Let's talk a little bit about The Muppet Christmas Carol as a movie. What works? What do you
All of
love
it.
about it?
All of it. I love it all. It's all perfect.
It's all perfect.
It's the perfect Christmas movie.
Oh my goodness, you're kidding
I'm
me.
not kidding.
Oh
It's the-
my goodness.
You know, it's funny. I have a list of all the Christmas movies that I was going to watch, you know, starting in the month of December to kind of get myself in the mood for Christmas and stuff. And out of all the movies on my list, you know, I probably listed 30 or 40 on there. And I realized Muppet Christmas Carol is absolutely my favorite one on that list.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
No, I was going through
fascinating.
and I was like, because I knew, I was like, you know what? That should be the first one I watch because that's actually going to be the one that puts me in the mood.
Wow.
I either need to watch it first or it needs to be the one that I watch on like Christmas Eve, you know? 'Cause that's the one.
Man, that is fascinating. See, for me, It's a Wonderful Life. You can't beat It's a
That's
Wonderful
a
Life.
great one too.
It's
It's on
a-
my list. I haven't watched it yet this year.
So I will say that some of the things that I really loved about the Muppet Christmas Carol is those cool models, like all the street scenes where, oh my goodness, floating over the city is so cool when you go down Bob
Really good
Cratchit's.
set design.
It really is. In like when you go to Bob Cratchit's neighborhood, all the buildings sort of lean. I
do.
love that. It's so cool.
I think what I like about it is that it feels like a stage production to
Yeah.
me in a way.
Yeah.
And I love the stage version. And so Muppets Christmas Carol, I think maybe most reminds me of that stage version.
Yeah. There's something about sort of that stage
Yeah.
production that is super cool.
Yep.
And you know, some of the puppetry was pretty cool too. I love the Ghost of Christmas Present. He was very fun, very bigger than life, right?
Come in and know me better, man. Did I already say that?
Ghost of Christmas Past was a little bit weird for me.
There were a lot of moments in this movie that actually really freaked me out as a kid. And that she was one of them. Because
Yeah.
even though I knew she was a nice character, she just looked too doll-like for me and it freaked me out a bit.
I can remember nearly 1900 years.
And then Marley's face is in the door knocker. And then Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, that always scared me as a kid.
Well, it looks like you could dive into his hood.
Oh
right?
yeah. That character is a lot spookier in other versions that I've seen. This is one of the most like toned down versions that you can get because it's just a big black shroud. You don't see anything skeletal or creepy beyond that.
Whoa, that's scary stuff. Hey, should we be worried about the kids in the audience?
No, it's all right. This is culture.
Nah, it's culture.
It's culture. It's fine.
Yeah,
we're telling you
I think parents
maybe you
need
should
to
be mindful that there are some scary scenes.
definitely
right?
scary. If nothing else, like if you see Gonzo and Rizzo like booking it and you've got a more sensitive viewer, maybe they need to book
Maybe
it
that's-
too.
yeah.
You know, maybe bring them back when Rizzo and Gonzo come back in.
I think that's fair.
Oh, this is too scary. I don't think I want to see any more.
Oh, when you're right, you're right. You're on your own, folks. We'll meet you at the finale.
Yeah. Oh.
This is
Spooky and
certainly
creepy.
much more navigable than some of the other films we've talked about on Rewind. You know, this is no Matrix, this is no Dark Knight,
Mhm.
but there are elements that I think families should probably be aware of. And luckily, you just wrote a review, so they can
Yes.
check out the review on pluggedin.com.
Yep, we have updated it.
It is new and improved. We'll just say that. So we have been talking about the Muppet Christmas Carol. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know if this is going to become like a every year classic movie, but I really did enjoy watching it for this. And I hope that our listeners, our viewers, have enjoyed this conversation about it. So be sure to check in with YouTube, like, comment, ring the bell, do all those things that you do on YouTube just so you know when another one of these is coming up. So thank you so much for joining us, and God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone. An old guy wearing blue jeans and a nightcap? You're no Charles Dickens.
I just loved the sound of the